My name is Joseph Carlson, and this is episode 271 of Gaming with Grief. And this episode is all about Final Fantasy. I've kind of looked at Final Fantasy from afar. So in this episode, I talked to my cousin's husband, Tim Novisky. I always say his name wrong. Anyway, I talked to Tim. I consider Tim a friend. He's loved Final Fantasy for a long time. And we go into that in the interview, kind of whatever. We were just chatting. And we kind of go into that, and he talks to me about how much he loves Final Fantasy and why. I talk about the problems I have with getting into it sometimes, but I still enjoy playing it. He basically tells me to go try Crisis Core, which is out now. So, yeah, basically this is just me chatting with Chim about Final Fantasy because I wanted to crack the case and know more about Final Fantasy. Also, just remind people, last episode I talked about the podcast is changing. The next episode of the pod won't come out until August 28th, so a month from now. And it'll hit 7 a.m., just like it's normally been hitting on YouTube. And hopefully, it'll be a better episode. I want to have more time. I'm playing a game, and I can't stop playing a game, which is always exciting when you're, reviewing something and can't stop playing it. So with that, we'll get to the interview with Tim. Remember, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we're just talking about Final Fantasy because, again, it is strange to me. I don't understand it. I look at it from afar, but I want to love it. And I played Final Fantasy VII Remake a little bit ago, Intergrade. A couple months ago, I talked about it on the pod a few episodes back. And there was something about it where I was like, yeah, I could see this is kind of great. I mean, I'm kind of coming in at the perfect moment with the remake. But yeah, Tim and I talk about that. So, without further ado, here's Tim and I talking. All right. Tim, thank you for joining me for the pod. We talked, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, about Final Fantasy, and I believe I have been a passive fan about Final Fantasy, but every time you bring up Final Fantasy, or I bring it up, you get very excited and say it's your favorite series.
Yes.
But even when I asked you, hey, do you want to be on the pod and talk about it, you said, I'm not an expert.
I'm not an expert. I would say I'm not an expert. I'm a fan, not an expert.
Right, which I think is great. When you're like, hey, do you want to talk about this thing you really like? You're like, I don't know. Should I talk about the thing I really like? When did you start playing Final Fantasy?
So I think that I started I started with Final Fantasy VII, like I think most people, the original.
99.9% of the people probably out there.
Yeah, and so that had to have been... I didn't get to it right when it came out in 1997, so it was right after that. I think it was like 6th grade. I think 6th grade is when I started 7. I think Final Fantasy 8 had already released.
Right.
But we started with 7.
And I'm sure
some friends.
I'm sure you have an internal list for your favorites, like your top 5, right?
I do.
Is 7 up there?
7 is up there. 7, I mean, it's all the nostalgia, right? So 7 is definitely in the top 3. Mm-hmm. And it's the one I've played the most.
Nice. Did you, obviously you played the remakes that have come out?
So I played the first one.
You haven't played
the first. So Rebirth, I just started literally today. So I got, surprise, surprise, for my birthday, my lovely wife bought me a PS5.
Oh. So, the whole thing?
Yeah.
Not just, wow.
Yeah, because I switched over to PC gaming, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I saw your setup too. It's pretty impressive. When I was over your house, I was like, wow.
And I haven't had a console in that long. And, Square Enix did this weird thing where they released just the Final Fantasy games first to PS5. So they're PlayStation exclusives.
Right.
And so I've had to wait for the ports to come out. So I played the first remake, the remake Intergrade. I played that on a friend's PS5, my old mates. Because I didn't have one.
Right.
And then I downloaded it onto my PC. And then I was going to have to wait for this one too. And I just made a joke a couple weeks ago. PlayStations came back in stock and they're not super expensive. They were on sale for Prime Day, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. So Rose ordered me one for my birthday. And
that's
the first thing I did was download Rebirth.
And then started it this morning. And then you did all the stuff around the house at 6 a.m, made sure the kids were good, and then just locked the door into your office and said, "This is what I'm doing today."
So I didn't play a ton today. I played probably an hour-ish today because I had to work. So in between work meetings.
Have you ever taken time off for a game? I've never done that. I've wanted to, and then you hear some catastrophe where it gets the game gets postponed, like they change the ship date or something, or there's a server problem, with some online game, and I've always wanted to take that time off, but the way things are online nowadays, I'm just like, I'll wait till the weekend when they iron the problems out, or
Yeah.
2 weeks or whatever.
I've considered it a couple times. I've never actually done it.
Yeah, luckily my wife games as well, and so she understands. And if I tell her, hey, this day I'm doing this, she's like, great. So even though you have a list of top 5 favorites, is it Final Fantasy VII? You said is number 1 on your list.
It's top 3. I would say. I mean, top 2 actually. So I think 7 and 9 are my 2 favorites. I've played 7 way more than 9. So yeah, probably my favorite.
You haven't played 14 at all, the online one, the MMO?
I played a little bit of it. Probably no more than like 3 or 4 hours.
Did you enjoy it, or was it like, I don't like this as an MMO? Like,
I think so. A game like that, like an MMO game, it's no fun for me to play by myself, right? So if I have people to play with and I have more time, I also don't have a ton of time right now.
right.
Then I do enjoy games like that. But that one didn't really catch my interest just because I was doing it by myself for like that first couple hours. And, for me, trying to figure out all that stuff for a game that's been around for like 10 years now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's. I'll say this much: I play it off and on. I think I have like 70 hours in it. But what I do is buy the prepaid cards and then budget the time to like, this is what I'm doing for 2 months or a month or whatever. And I've gotten a lot of stuff wrong. I'm sure if I showed someone my builds or whatever. In fact, part of that game is you have to do dungeons, and you used to have to go in with people. Which, since I was behind in the game and people were doing things like for the 5th time, I would just run through it with people who knew what they were doing. But I was the boat anchor because it was my first time and I didn't know what I was doing with my class. And I got a couple of notes. They were very nice, but there's people that would whisper to me after the thing of like, hey, your armor sucks. You got to do, X, Y, and Z, like be better, but it was fun playing with you. And I thought, oh, that's a nice way to let me down,
Toxic internet culture.
Yeah, there wasn't any caps or anything. It was more like, but what they've done now is at least Final Fantasy 14, they allow you to have like AI NPCs like that go through that you don't have to find another player. You can just load up on, they'll give you an NPC healer, an NPC DPS. So you can just go in with like, you could do the dungeon, without having to bother real people that know what they're doing to drag them down. You can just go in and then if you die 3 times like I have and a couple of them, you don't feel bad. You're like, yeah, it's just me, I guess we don't have to wipe. The other thing I was going to ask you is if someone doesn't play Final Fantasy, there is obviously a rich history with Final Fantasy, but like, could you just jump into Final Fantasy and say this is the one? Because I know they tried that with 16 because it was more fantasy oriented, and they thought, it was like Game of Thrones, but with Final Fantasy. I played the demo of that and really liked it. It's actually on sale now. I probably should like pick it up. I think it's like $20 or $30.
Oh, nice.
But do you just tell people, like, what do you tell people that don't really know that much about Final Fantasy? Are you like, yeah, just pick one, or do you try to evangelize the ones you like?
So, I'll always recommend the ones I like, but for someone so the first question I generally ask people that are interested is what kind of RPGs they've played.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you don't have a background in certain RPGs, I think some of it's going to be like a little weird for you or possibly boring. I think the first real RPGs I've ever played, like all the way through when I was young, were Zelda games, right?
Right.
A Link to the Past is probably the one and only Super Nintendo game I played all the way through from beginning to end.
Nice.
Hey,
one for one.
Yeah. Right. And I think I got introduced to Final Fantasy from a friend of mine when he was playing. So he was playing it. We all hang out at everybody's houses, and we'd watch, and then we would get interested in that kind of stuff. So it was the first of that style RPG that I played, like the turn-based kind of long multi-disc, right? PlayStation.
Oh yeah, insert disc 2 now.
Disc 2, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I just tell people to try it. So I ask them if they have what kind of background they have in RPGs, and if they have some turn-based, then I'll recommend like 7s and 9s.
Oh.
Right. If they don't do the turn-based style, then I probably, like this day and age, I'd probably recommend something or like one of the remakes or Crisis Core or something where you're like actually doing things. So, or if they've played, a lot of hack and slash style games, then like, you can try these turn-based games, but you might not like them.
Yeah, I think the 7, the remake. Of course, I was around when 7 got released because I'm an old man, but I always saw the worst parts of 7. So like, if you were to pitch a game to someone and be like, yeah, there's this thing about the environment, and Shinra's trying to destroy the Earth, basically. I didn't see any of that. I would always come over to people's houses and they'd be racing chocobos, or
Side questing.
yeah, or they
Yeah.
would be fighting the same boss over and over again because they got their butt handed to them, and you're like, "What is this game?" Okay, it was not. I was like, I don't. Plus, I wasn't really that much into turn based, so it did not get me excited.
So
for-
turn-based appealed to me at the time. I mean, even now, and probably even more now as an adult, because like, I didn't have to have 100% of my focus on the game in front of me. Like shooters, real-time action games. Like if you're not paying attention, you die,
Right.
right? But a turn-based one, if it's my turn and I don't choose to go, I could like run to the bathroom or
Yeah.
do something, and I don't know when that kind of appealed to me then. Some of the older ones though were like a little difficult because they didn't like tier the games like they do now. So you could get this, probably my biggest pet peeve about Final Fantasy VIII is you could get really far in that game without like leveling your characters up correctly, and then you get to a
Oh.
point where you can't do anything. You can't go back. You
Oh.
can't go forward. You just get stuck.
Yeah, I think it does seem like in new games they have like a lot of respect token options, whatever the game calls it. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you screwed up. I forget what game I was playing, but it was like, just hit this button and redo everything. I was like, you guys are geniuses. Like we realized a long time ago we don't want to be locked into something.
Yeah, or like Diablo, right? Like the new Diablo 4, the game like tiers to your character and your level. So
Oh, nice. I reached back out to Blizzard. They gave me a laundry list of questions to answer for security purposes. 8 of them, 8 or 10 of them. I answered probably 6 or 7 of them, the ones I had, because they asked me about Hearthstone, and I've never played Hearthstone. But I sent that all to their GM. Hopefully, in a few days, I'll hear back. Because I actually found my original WoW creation account name from 2008. And
wow.
put the date on there, and then I bought one of those keychain authenticators back in the day. You had to like hit a button on a keychain little fob.
Yeah, and it gave you
And I found the receipt for that in my emails of like when it got shipped to my house. So I had to send all that info to them, like the dates, and they're gonna get back to me. But go back to Final Fantasy in general. I played Intergrade, and I'm not really a turn-based guy, but like you said, there's enough turn-based and action in that you can kind of like strategize. And it's weird. I like I said, I haven't played a lot of turn-based, but it wasn't until I played like a newer Dragon Age game, like I think it was Dragon Age Origins back in the day, like in 2008 or when that came out. The idea of doing action and combat and like queuing your attacks, but then hitting like pause and everything stopping, and you really looking at your loadouts, attacks, stuff like that, and really planning it. Nowadays, when I play games, I really start thinking like that. Like in Final Fantasy, Intergrade, when I was playing that, I was like, okay, I got a couple minutes, like you said, not just going to the bathroom, but just looking at the screen and being like, I don't know, should I use a spell here? I don't know, that pairs well with, Barrett's minigun. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. It's like that idea to just take a step back,
yeah,
Or like
to slow it down.
yeah,
so it doesn't like.
and in
so it
most
just get,
in most action games, you just get your teeth kicked in, like a shooter, like you said. I've gotten those weird doom loops in like Call of Duty when the autosave kicks in right before you die. And so when it boots you back up, you're just looking at the face of a bullet. And you're like, well, do I load the last? I guess I go to the last checkpoint then because I'm just going to keep getting shot. Yeah. So is there something about Final Fantasy, like besides the combat? I mean, you like the world and stuff like that. Is there one world in Final Fantasy that sticks out more than the others? One that you're like, that was good, like all the world design and stuff.
um,
And I'm writing this down.
probably- Yeah, probably 13. Final Fantasy 13.
Oh, it does. Isn't that the one that like Lightning Returns? Like it's very divisive.
Yeah,
like-
so there's sequels to that game, right?
Yeah.
There's 10 did it, and then 13 did it. The original 13, the world and like running around and that kind of stuff, I thought was great. That could be a rough take, right? get a lot of heat for that because there are people I think that love the game or they hate the game. I don't think there's too many in between.
I think it's one of those things where it seems like there's always a boomerang effect now on the internet where people like it, you throw the boomerang, and then 10 years later it comes back and people are like, oh, I really hated it. Or like with Final Fantasy 13, I've heard the other thing where everybody's like, this really sucks. Like when it came out, it's just a corridor. This is what I've heard and read. Oh, you just run down a corridor. And now people are like, no, there was a lot of stuff in that game that was actually really good. You know, like it seems to
No,
come
I
back.
remember like going into. It's been a while, but like I don't. I mean, maybe there probably were corridor places and stuff, but I also remember you going into like open world areas of the map. It's just like, monsters are spawned in front of you and you can avoid them if you want, and it's like I remember that. I also remember that game you had to dedicate all kinds of time to battling the battle system
Right.
because like you'd come up against the boss and that boss alone would take like an hour of your time. Like that battle would be an hour long by itself.
And is it one of those chess battles where if you move the piece in the wrong way, you're dead and you have to start over?
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
13 introduced like the paradigm shift where you could like change whether your person's like a straight attack person or a magic person or
Oh,
a
that's
healer, but you had to do that on the fly.
That's
So
cool.
like because you can't control your teammates, they kind of just auto fight, but
Oh,
you
you-
have to essentially control them by telling them what kind of fighter you want them to be. They're all out attack,
that's
or they're
interesting.
magic. Yeah, so you have to be and when you're fighting bosses, like you have to in order to like beat their gauge up enough where you could stagger them or really hurt them, you had to find the combination of like switching your characters at the right times for their attacks to like
That
so
kind
that
of
they layered on top of each other to get that stagger in.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me when I did. It wasn't in World of Warcraft, but I heard the term in World of Warcraft. They called it stance dancing. So you'd be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you'd be
Yeah,
like, yeah, I don't know if you play World of Warcraft, but you do
I
that.
don't, but that makes sense.
It was the idea of I didn't figure it out until I played Guild Wars 2 because there was a character, an elementalist, which is basically a mage, but they could
Yeah.
control all the elements. And if you hit the like F1, F2, you went from fire to water, whatever. And so then you would do like I'd go to like earth and hit them with something and it would slow them down, and then I do fire, so they're walking towards me slow and they're burning, and there was like a half a second between each element you went to, and then you could use wind and like push them away, and like I got really good at like stance dancing in a way, and that's what that sounds like, that particle shift. You're like, okay, I'm gonna hit him with the fire and make him vulnerable to this. Or gonna freeze them and then they're gonna be vulnerable to fire, so I have to ship over to my fire spells or whatever. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like I think
And that was more like, I mean, if I remember correctly, it's more like attack versus magic versus healing versus some sort of status effect. Like someone would have some status effect where they
Right.
could like, if it's a machine, do certain things to them. So, the
That-
mechanics of the game were rough if you like didn't figure them out.
Yeah, if you didn't, like, yeah, if you didn't, like you said, put in the time, at least a little bit of time. I did notice that when I played the demo for 16, there was a lot of that, like, you got like a fire uppercut, and then, your auto attacks didn't do a lot. I mean, I only played the demo, but there did seem to be this synergy with, like, this does more if they're vulnerable, and then you can hit them with this whatever, and this has a cooldown. It's like, and again, I just played the demo, and I was like, man, in the main game, this has to be like so freaking in depth. I think I heard some reviews where people are like, yeah, you could really mess people up or get messed up if you don't, because
Figure it out.
you can only have a couple of those abilities equipped at one time, right? So
Gotcha.
you had to like, I don't know, whatever. I will say this, and I've said it before. Going back to Final Fantasy 14, they did like an encyclopedia for the game, and they have 3 volumes, and each volume is part of the world, and just the layout of it is like fake leather with the crystal on the front, and you open it up and they have the Hylian script on there, and like it just looks, or Hydaelyn, it looks like they, like a wizard or like a scholar from Final Fantasy wrote the book. They took a lot of time to make it look good, and that I like reading that story and like how the world's created and all that, and that kind of stuff makes me want to play the game more. Plus I want to figure out what are the Moogles, what's going on with them. I mean, I saw them in Final Fantasy 14. Are they in other games? Because I've
Yeah.
only seen them in 14. Do they just do the same thing where they give you letters, or what are they just like delivery people?
Yeah, so I think like as far as like being a big part of the game, I think they were introduced. Again, I could be wrong here, but I think they were introduced to right around Final Fantasy IX. They're in Final Fantasy IX a lot, so they're a big part of that. They're a big part of that game. To do a lot of things and then kind of just stuck around doing similar things
Oh.
throughout the rest of the game.
I will say the things I've done in Final Fantasy 14, I'm only through the main. I haven't even got to Heavensward yet, which is like the first big expansion. But I dip in and out and I play. And I will say,
They just released a new one, didn't they?
yeah, it's
feel
like
like a
the
new one just
fifth
came
one. But they said it's like placeholder sounds bad, but like they're starting a new story arc. So they said it's kind of on a down, like you will be fighting bosses and stuff, but it's not like earth shattering. Like they're setting up the new story. And so I've heard not mixed things, but people are like, I mean, it's like how did I hear it described? Like the vacation arc of like, we just got through all this stuff. We just beat all this stuff in these expansions. Let's take a minute to relax, which I'm all for, But I do think it's weird. All this stuff I've done in Final Fantasy 14, everybody looks very serious and takes their job very serious. But when a group of people in a cinematic ride into battle on chocobos, it's kind of funny. It's a little funny. You're like, I thought and then you can get horses and stuff in Final Fantasy 14. Like there's promotional items and mounts you can get. And I saw, so you can ride your mounts into buildings in Final Fantasy 14. You can just ride your chocobo, run right into the end to turn everything in, turn your quests in and stuff. Mm-hmm. One of the promotional items was the car from Final Fantasy 15.
Oh, nice. You just drive around that thing?
They literally just drove into the inn when I was there with my chocobo turning something in. A guy drove in with the car and just got out. I was like, what? You just drive your car in the inn now? That's crazy. But apparently there's all these quests to get those and everything, and I haven't really dipped. I haven't dipped too much into it. So I'm trying to think what else. What other questions I got here? So you think Final Fantasy 13 is a hidden gem in a way? You think that's the one?
Yeah, as far as hidden gem as far as the storyline in the game, probably not. Like, not one of my favorites. But as far as like cinematically, a good game. Mm-hmm. I thought Final Fantasy 13 looked really good.
Yeah,
I think 15 also looks really good, right?
Yeah, I do like the look of 16, even though it's fantasy. I did like some of the designs, and there was some like the demo. I think is still available. Playing the demo, these big creatures fight each other, these primals or whatever, that's what they are. Anyway, those look really epic, and I just started playing Intergrade probably like a month ago, and I was like, I'm not really a JRPG guy, but I do play. So I play a little bit of everything, and I was like, you know what, just slow your roll and sit down and play this. And it was like a Sunday afternoon, and I kind of got like, I don't know, an hour into it, and I was like, yeah, Cloud, these guys are kind of cool, like they were like, it looks beautiful too. Like, cause I downloaded Intergrade and was playing it like right away. It was like, I got it. It was like on PS Plus. They did like that thing every month where they rotate through games, and they gave it out, and I immediately downloaded it. And I think Crisis Core is actually coming to the service as well. So I can download Crisis Core, which apparently
Crisis Core was fun. Crisis Core was fun. Yeah.
Did it have a weird casino thing in it though? Like in the corner, I saw a review.
So your power ups and your status effects and that kind of stuff were randomized with almost like a slots type thing.
Was it distracting when you played that? Because I just watched a review and was like, would that be distracting to see a slot machine in the corner the whole time you're playing? Well, probably not cutscenes, but
yeah, actually. So when I started that game, I actually didn't notice it at all for a while. Like I didn't realize what it was doing for a while into the game, and then I realized what it was doing. I was like, oh, I actually need to pay attention to this a little bit. So then I did start paying attention to it, but it didn't distract me. I swear to God, for the first couple hours I played that game, I didn't even realize it was there. So.
Maybe I'll tune it out. But can you hit a button and stop the slot where you want it, so that way you can get your power ups? Or
I don't think so. I think it is random.
But it's none of it's negative. It's just always a positive, just a better positive than. It's like, oh, now you have 50 less hit points, or your life is 50. You're like, what? No, like I'm right in the middle of this fight. That'd be
terrible. And then I think a jackpot in there would be, essentially like a special move. Just activate the special move when it pops up.
Oh, that's cool.
Something like that. I don't know. I thought that game was a lot of fun. It was quick. It didn't take me very long.
Yeah, I think I saw you streaming it a while ago when it came out.
Yeah, so it didn't take very long. It's not like the storyline's not super long.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of side quests you can do that people like to do. I, for one, am not. I want to be entertained by a game, but now I have small children. We're busy all the time, so it's hard for me to put like hundreds of hours into a game.
Which,
So
yeah,
a
one of
game
you,
that I
yeah, one of your kids is trying to learn drums too, right behind you. So that's got to be really terrible. You're trying to play a
I
game.
actually, so my second monitor right here. I'll send you a picture of it. But one of the kids took a drumstick to it, so it
Oh, right in the middle, it cracked.
yeah, cracked.
Oh man.
So it wasn't the good monitor. It wasn't the nice one.
The one you
but it
just
was-
bought, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
no.
Yeah. So they gotta watch the kids being in here. But I don't have like the time to jump into a game. So I need the game to be entertaining. I'm not gonna I don't play games like Elden Ring that are super, super hard.
Yeah.
And I don't play on super hard difficulty. I play on normal on most of these games.
My wife,
Especially Final Fantasy games. I play normal and I play for, an hour or two at a time most.
yeah.
At the most. So, a 20, 30 hour campaign is perfect. Perfect.
Right, yeah. Well, that's what Crisis Core was. Wasn't it only like 20 hours or something?
It was like 20 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. That was one where I was like, well, because I think I saw some cutscenes. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then they said it's short. Because I think even Integrate, isn't that like 40 to 60 hours if you really wanted to like deep dive into it and stuff? If you wanted to
Yeah. So, I think Crisis Core, I think I clocked to get through the campaign. If you skip all of the side quest stuff, you can get through it in like 15 or 16 hours.
Hmm.
And then it's like something like 35 hours to get through.
That's actually,
Side
that's not
quest
bad.
stuff.
That's not bad. Well, Tim, I know you don't have a lot of time. Thank you for just spreading the good word about Final Fantasy. It feels like this is like a church thing. We're like, have you heard about our Lord and Savior Shinra? It's like, wait, no, they're the bad guys, Tim. No.
You're right,
You
right,
took the
right.
wrong message. Yeah, I'll probably text you or whatever because I'm going to continue to play. Usually I'm playing stuff for review for the pod, but like on Sundays I'll play, something different or fun or whatever. And it'll probably be next year. I'll get, hey, I finally beat Intergrade, like that kind of schedule.
Well, so on Final Fantasy games too, some of the characters are recurring. So they have recurring characters in the games. So,
Yeah, I did hear that some characters from Crisis Core come into Final Fantasy VII or vice versa. Like there's history there with them.
Yeah, 7, 8, 9, 10. All of them have 15. They all have one character in common that
Right.
shows up in a different way every time. So
Well,
But-
I know 14 is Barrett. Not Barrett. Sid.
Sid. It's
Sid's,
Sid.
yeah, he's the one that
Sid is in all of them.
yeah, he it's like they always have to. They're like for the design thing of them being like, okay, where is so and so going to show up, and where is that's got to be a little bit easy, but the main protagonist always seems to change, so it's like, oh man, that's got to be the hard part. So
Yeah.
cool. Well, thank you, Tim, for telling me about Final Fantasy and why I should like it, and maybe I'll give 13 a shot in 4 years. It was 13 long. Was that
I feel like it was long. I mean, it was a long time ago that I played it, but I felt like it was really long. And I got annoyed at
Well, there's
some of the
part
boss-
2 and part
boss
3,
battles.
right? Too, isn't there?
Yeah,
a
I did
trilogy?
not play those. I
Yeah.
only played the first one.
And even after the first one, you're like, man, that's too
Yeah.
much.
So I would say if you want to go back to an old school one and you don't want to go all the way back to old school 7, 9 and 10 are amazing. So those are my top 3. 7, 9, and 10 are my top 3.
I have the one on the SNES Classic. It had 21 games. It's got Final Fantasy 6 or 3. It was a weird Japanese numbering thing. So everybody says that's good too. I don't think it's that long. I should probably play that too. I heard it's got a really
and
good
that's
boss.
that's old school.
Yeah.
Um,
That,
but if you want to dive into some of the older ones before these modern ones, 7, 9, and 10 are probably.
Well, I might do Crisis Core because you said it's a shorter one. That way you're not, because like I said, I liked Integrate, but I was like, is this 40 hours? I don't know about that, but if Crisis Core is, like you said, only 13 to 16 hours, that might be perfect for me.
Yeah,
So.
and that's just running through the storyline, right? Just I run through the campaign so I can hear the story, and then I'm usually
You're out.
good.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, Tim.